welcome everybody to the Gavel Strikes. I'm Brian Wiedman
I'm
and
Xavier.
Xavier. Oh, there he goes. He finally did it. We have to apologize. We had to do this remote today. We're having the storm of all storms in Dallas right now, and so nobody is going anywhere. I have to apologize for my bird. I have a parrot, and she's a little loud. So if you hear chirping in the background, that's her. We brought Jay Carlson. It's not him. It's the chirping isn't Jay. But hopefully he'll tell us a lot. And we brought Jay with for VHS, so we have a guest this week. So hopefully we have a good show. We don't normally do this remote, especially fully remote. But as I said, it's snowing and raining and freezing in Dallas. There are inches of ice everywhere. It's not pleasant, not fun, and go out with your car. That's all I'm telling you. Let's see how long you last. Wreck a 10th one. No. So Jay, we brought you on. We're glad to have you. What exactly do you do with the VHS department? It's a new department. What about
I
it?
was under the impression that I was here to learn about bird business.
Oh, is that what it is? She'll scream at you if you answer wrong. That's all I'm going to say. Can you really hear it that much?
Yes.
Like, is it obnoxious? That's okay. She's obnoxious. She can get that way. So, sorry. I do apologize to everybody out there, but she's in a large cage. It's not exactly easy to move. And she does like to talk. So, no, really, Jay, what is it? What do you do? It's a cool department that just started, really.
Yeah, I get to do the coolest thing in the world, where I get to talk about movies and get rare VHS tapes and present them to the world. I love movies, so being able to do this job is basically a dream come true. Outside of working on a movie, this is probably the next best thing I could be doing.
That would be cool, working on a movie, but they work long hours. It's almost easier here, right? Hey, that's enough out of you. I was not talking to Xavier that time. But seriously, okay, I'm gonna fix that. Can you come move her? She's being obnoxious. Hey, that's enough.
She just wants to be part of the show.
Oh, she does want to be part of the show. That's the problem. I am so sorry, everybody. It's not usually this much of a zoo in my place. So you get to work in movies, but what makes them valuable? I mean,
this is ostensibly, like, VHS collectors have always been out there, but collecting sealed VHS tapes is sort of a new thing that's cropped up over the last, 2 years or so. It got really hot. I had been doing it for a little while before that, just because I love movies and I loved my time going to the video store as a kid. And so I just started picking up tapes that I used to love renting, movies that made an impression on me as a kid. And when I started doing it, I wanted to find the earliest known copies of films. I wanted to find their first releases, just like, like a comic character, you want first appearances. And so, I would go back and try to find the earliest version of Ghostbusters that I could find, or Back to the Future, and, all of these movies that made a big impression on me as a kid. And then I could still vividly remember the covers in the video store and spending all that time. And so, it just kind of went from there. And then other people started jumping in, I think, as a result of video games getting popular. And, all of a sudden, there were all these new collectors coming into the field, and it just really exploded, 2 years ago. And since then, people have been on the hunt for, those early tapes, and it's made it much more difficult to find anything. I've been basically priced out of the hobby. But thankfully I was in there ahead of a lot of people, and it's only grown since we started doing auctions last June, and seems like it keeps getting bigger and bigger, and more people keep coming in.
So we're only talking about sealed games, or sealed. Sealed games too, I guess. But we're only talking about sealed VHS, right?
I think right now it's just sealed, but I could see a similar thing happening with complete in box. I've had conversations with other collectors, and I've brought up, like, would you rather have like a pristine open box copy of the first release of Back to the Future, or would you rather have the 1989 copy that came out 3 years later sealed. And for me, I'd rather have that first release than the second. So I think, I think that the complete in box will eventually sort of pick up, but right now it's, people are focusing strictly on sealed.
So what determines, like, how do you determine if it's a first print, if it's a year later? Because we've had these discussions before where you may have the same date on the box, right? But it might be 2 years later. Is
Yeah.
that accurate?
Yeah. So, a lot of it is, the way that it worked back in the olden days of the 80s was that, these tapes would come out somewhere around, a year or so after the film was released in theaters. And even then it was released to video stores first. So it wasn't something that most people were able to buy unless they wanted to, pony up $79.95
right
to buy, the movie when it first came out. And so, it's one of those things where there's not a lot of great resources online, as far as like, for vinyl, you can go to Discogs or whatever, and they've got every release listed, and it makes it very simple to be a collector. But for VHS, because this is a fairly new thing, a lot of it is people just having to do their own research, having to scour eBay and Mercari and these other places online and try to figure out, like, okay, the movie was released in 1985. This seems to be the next, the closest to that date of this 1986 copy of Goonies, that's dated on the back. And even within that, even if you find the right date on the box, other factors come into play because collectors want that very first release. So they'd use that same box for the video store release and then for the consumer release. And so that now people are looking at watermarks and trying to figure out, is this the earliest version based off of the watermarks and the date on the sleeve? And so there's a couple factors that you would look at in order to try to figure out a first release. But ultimately, most of these things you can look through eBay and find plenty of sold copies of open box ones. And you kind of, if it's a movie that you're sort of targeting, you want to look at that stuff first. But the great part is because so many new people are jumping into this, information is getting passed around a lot easier than it used to, because sealed VHS collecting wasn't really a thing.
Yeah, 2 years ago it was almost the Wild West.
Yeah.
But so could this be like video games where down the road you have a hang tab or a matte sticker, and all of a sudden that makes that more earlier, and you find out about it? Could there be that sort of discovery?
Yeah, for sure. So like one of the good examples is like in the mid 80s, releases that came out through Warner Brothers would have the very first releases would have watermarks on the front, watermarks on the back, a two-tone tape, so the tape guard would be a different color that you could look at the bottom of the tape and see that this is a different color. And they would have a silver security sticker to keep people from prying open the tape and stealing the reels out of it, so that they would have that. So those are the three things that you would look for a first release in like the mid 80s for Warner Brothers. And so, those little details, it's those little things that can separate a tape from being worth a few $100s to being worth $10,000. It's those little bits that the collectors are starting to zero in on in order to find that earliest copy.
And we're not talking about chump change either. I mean, that's the thing about this, is that all of a sudden tapes that were $100 5 years ago are now Goonies. The Goonies is the most amazing. You have a beta. What did that go? The beta went for something
Beta
like
sold for I think 15,000 in the first auction,
and then the VHS went for something like 80, right? It
the
went something ridiculous.
VHS sold for 50 in that first auction, and we have one in this auction that's
okay.
That's a little bit it's almost the same as the one that we had in the first auction that sold for 50, but the auction that's currently going on right now, that tape is up to, I think it's over 10,000 now, and it just went up for
it just started.
It just started 2 days ago, so it's already over 10,000. People love Goonies.
Right. So you brought stuff to show, right? I mean, we never do this show without showing off stuff. So
yeah, we've got some super cool early lots, and there's actually a couple in here that are like later. We've got an original drawer box copy of Rocky 2 and Rocky 3, and these all came from a consignor who had his son was born on Christmas Day in 1982. He and his wife got together with their friends and their neighbors, and they came up with these ideas of what to put away in a time capsule that in 40 years would seem, interesting, and probably would be things that didn't really exist anymore. So they put like a checkbook in there and a bunch of Jordache jeans, a brand new pair of Jordache jeans in there, and they put VHS tapes, and they had Rocky 1 through 3 that got put away. And so these copies of Rocky 1, 2, and 3 are the only known drawer box original copies of Rocky that are still sealed out there. So Rocky 1 and 2 especially are very difficult to find in their original big drawer box. But yeah, these are the only known 20th Century Fox video copies of Rocky 1 and 2 that are still in the original factory shrink out there. And it was amazing to get that call. These are such rare titles. I had never seen them before, and they're like I said, in the collecting community, these are the only known copies that are out there right now.
So explain the term drawer box. You're using a term that I'm not sure a lot of people are familiar with.
Yeah, it's so with 20th Century Fox and then CBS Fox until they changed to the more traditional sort of slipcase where the tape came out of the bottom, they were using drawer box for the first couple of years, and basically it was an oversized box, and the tape slid out of the side, and it was because it was oversized, it was sort of nestled in this sort of cradle inside, and so the side of it would slide out like a drawer, so they call it a drawer box.
Gotcha. Great. Well, that's amazing. So the drawer box then are the first that we know of Rocky. That's incredible. And so explain the grading now. What makes it so? I mean, obviously, if this is the only one, it doesn't really matter what the grade is if it's still sealed, right?
True. Yeah. It's and so this has been graded at 85 by VGA, who also does video games, and they do action figures as AFA. So this is a near mint copy. So it's if you're finding tapes and they're 85 plus, that's pretty much as mint as you're going to find out there.
Like a 9/8 comic, so to speak, or
exactly.
Okay.
Occasionally you'll see like a VGA 90 or a VGA 90 plus in very rare instances, but for the most part, 85 plus, especially for something this old that we're talking is 40 years old at this point. 85 and an 85 plus is pretty much the best you're going to find when it comes to something 40 years old.
Awesome. What else did you bring? That's amazing. I mean, imagine getting that call. What do you think? And now, I obviously it's very, very hard to tell, but what kind of value are you talking about on something that doesn't exist in any other form?
It's hard to say. It's one of those things that with the excitement that's been picked up around VHS lately, and the fact that these are the only known copies of such an iconic franchise. Everybody knows Rocky, and they came out during a period that I call sort of the sweet spot for collectors with VHS. Like the tapes started being produced 1977, 1978 is where you'll find the earliest VHS and beta tapes that have come out. And then up until like VCRs started to drop in price around like 1985, 85, 86, that sweet spot is basically from the late 70s when VHS started to about 86, and that's because there were far less quantities being produced because most people didn't own a VCR. There weren't as many video stores at that point, and so if it's a big title and it came out within that window, especially if it's in the earlier part of the 80s, really, really hard to find stuff. Like the quantities are beyond difficult to find.
That's a really good question. Can you see that question?
Yeah. So I guess, as far as the Action 1 of VHS tapes goes, I think everybody associates Star Wars with, being the big release that came out during that period. Everybody knows Star Wars from the 80s just based off of VHS. I mean, obviously it was a big title, and it really propelled people to buy VCRs and that kind of thing. So those early copies, we have a 1983 copy of Star Wars in this auction. That is the second release. There's only 4 known copies. That's another drawer box release. So there was an 82 copy that was a drawer box, and that was a 20th Century Fox. And then 20th Century Fox changed to CBS Fox, which is the copy we have. There's only, I think, 5 known copies of the 82 release, and then there's only 4 known copies of this 83 release out there. So it's an exceptionally rare title. Most people are more familiar with the slipcase version, which started in 1984. That's sort of the more traditional looking, 80s Star Wars VHS. But those first two releases in the bigger drawer boxes are just insanely hard to find, especially.
But I don't know, like, I don't know if most people know this because I'm 50, and I was, that sweet spot you're talking about. I'm only 6 years old, 7 years old, and we're starting to hit video stores, and I remember the values, and I remember what my parents had to do to rent a videotape. It was $50 as a deposit,
Yeah,
and then it was X amount of dollars, and the tapes themselves were over $100 a piece.
yeah,
And if you lost one or damaged one, you had to pay $100. I mean, like, it was
yeah.
insane how expensive they were.
Oh yeah, I
To
remember
start out.
my grandfather would be one of those ones that would, if it was a movie he really liked at the beginning, he would pay the $80 to $100 to buy the tape, rather than renting it. And most people they weren't swinging $100 every time they wanted to buy a movie. So
Right.
they wait until 6 months to a year later when the prices dropped, and they would sell it as a sell through title. But the early stuff just is so hard to find, like especially if we're talking late 80s through like the early 80s, 82, like there were just so few quantities being made, and the ones that were being made were mostly being sold to video stores who were just going to open it and rent it anyway. So to find like sealed copies from that period is just, it's immensely difficult. And they really are like, it's such a rare thing to find, because some of these titles we don't even know if they exist sealed anymore. So
Oh,
so
sure.
an open box copy might be the best answer for some of these early titles that we've never seen.
But then that brings in a better question, or a bigger question is, are they going to then take into account what the tape itself looks like as part of the grade? Because if it's open box and the tape is a degenerate, I mean, because that stuff doesn't last,
No.
and it needs a very, very narrow temperature range to exist. So what do you think at that point? Because let's
I,
face it, your sealed copies could be damaged
oh yeah,
internally,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah, and
But they're
this is one of
sealed,
those.
so you don't know.
Yeah, it's one of those things. So there's been a whole a whole subsection of VHS collectors that have carried VHS for the last 20 years since it stopped being produced. And so a lot of those people, for them, they find the value of these tapes as the movie that's held on that tape, not necessarily the box or the shrink wrap that's on it. They value the movie, and so a lot of them are even reticent about buying a sealed copy to open it now, because they don't know if the tape inside is good or not good. At least with another one, somebody can test it and say, hey, this thing works, it plays, and they're
Right.
happy to get that. But when it comes to grading, it's sort of like it's two different schools of collector. There's the guys who are collecting the movie, that's on the tape, and then there's other people that are collecting the artifact, the sealed tape, the first release of that tape. So it's sort of, even though it's the same thing, they're kind of collecting different things, just sort of different sides of the same coin. It's one guy is looking for that historical piece that they can hold in their hand, and then the other person is looking for the movie, which at this point in time, like a lot of these movies, unless you're looking for a nostalgia kick, you can watch it in 4K digitally, through a bunch of streaming services, or buy it. There's a lot of options for it to view it in a better way than a VHS copy anyway.
Right. And it's interesting because it's almost like Magic the Gathering. You said a different market. You've got the collecting market, you've got the playing market, you've got the collecting and playing market. All those different markets inside the game itself,
Yeah.
or inside the medium itself. It almost kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah. And so,
X,
another good
disappeared. He
example.
doesn't like you.
X needed to
Another
get the
good
charger
example
for
of
his
these too,
computer.
though, is like we see crossover collectors. Like we've got sure to maybe appeal to a comics fan. We have a Superman beta in this auction, and it's a big box Warner Brothers release from like 1980, 79, 80, and it's the only known beta copy that's out there. There's, I think, one VHS copy out there that's known currently, and that's it. And again, this is another one, like, just because of when it came out, like this could be the only one that's out there. People are turning over every rock they can trying to find these early tapes, and so far this is it for that. So
Yeah,
so
$2,000. I don't know. That's a good question too. I don't know if people understand, when an auction first opens, if it jumps to $2,000, or like I think we saw another one at $5,000, getting a jump like that in the first 24 hours, that means it is spectacular.
Yeah.
It's a big time item, because most of the time people just wait a little bit. They don't want to, show their poker hand too early. They will wait to bid. But on a big item like that, that's a big deal to get that kind of a bidding.
Yeah, and fortunately for the last couple of these auctions that we've done, they've jumped out very early. People are really enthusiastic about tapes and getting their bids in early, and people are pretty aggressive with their bidding, rather than more traditionally, like I would maybe try to hold back and wait till the end.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these people are coming out and really trying to scare people away, so that they get
away.
Yeah, and
it's definitely a different philosophy for sure.
Yeah, and as far I see the question about, is beta more rare than VHS? I don't. It could be in some cases. It's definitely more rare. Like we have a copy of Mission Impossible, the Tom Cruise movie that was released in '96. It's the last beta tape that was ever produced by a studio. Paramount at that point, I think, had made retailers sign something saying they were going to order 20 copies in order to produce a tape on a movie on beta. And so Mission Impossible in '96 was the very last one. I had for years growing up, I thought beta was done by the mid '80s.
I did too, actually.
But yeah, they were continued through like maybe early '90s is when studios were still making them. Like I saw a copy of the one that had surprised me when I was younger, seeing Batman, the Michael Keaton version, on beta, and I had thought like, oh, I didn't realize they were still producing beta in the late '80s. At that point, I thought they were already kind of done. But lo and behold, Mission Impossible '96 was coming out on beta. Which
you're getting more questions than we've had in podcasts. What the heck is going on here? This is great, and they're great questions too.
They are, yeah. LaserDiscs are another fun one. I've got LaserDiscs myself. I've got some down here by my feet. I don't know if LaserDiscs are going to pick up. They were being produced at the same time as VHS, which is another thing most people don't realize, is they were being made in the late '70s alongside VHS. And LaserDisc image quality at the time is something that could possibly rival a DVD copy. They had the same potential for storage on there, but they were high end. So like the rich kid in the neighborhood had the LaserDisc player maybe, but most of the time people were still doing VHS. So I think because of the nostalgic factor, VHS is still going to beat out beta and LaserDisc, just because most people associate their home video watching with that format specifically. But I think that I've seen people buying LaserDiscs. I bought LaserDiscs. I've had a LaserDisc player since the late '90s, and I still have a bunch of unopened ones too. But it's one of those things where I think I'm a big Blade Runner guy, and so I've got multiple Blade Runner releases on LaserDisc. I've got VHS releases on that, and no betas yet, but I'm sure I'll end up getting there.
I can't imagine how. I can't just imagine how rare they are. LaserDiscs. VHS have to be rare. Beta's got to be rare, right? But LaserDiscs have to be insanely rare.
Yeah, you don't see too many of those super early ones. They're really, even open copies are just difficult to find. Like if you're looking for an early Jaws, MCA had produced that in 78, 79, I think, alongside the first VHS release, which I don't know what a sealed Jaws would go for, but I do know that a sealed VHS of that first release of Jaws is probably at this point a six-figure tape. I think that it would cross 100,000 if one of them came up for auction. Let's hope that it does.
That's amazing. We had that comment that they were just too big, so people use CDs instead, but that's not really accurate. Yes, they were big; they're record size. That's accurate.
That's what I was going to say. The record size.
CDs didn't really exist now for another 5 to 10 years. They pushed out. CDs didn't become a thing until the late '80s. Because I remember I didn't have a CD player until I think I went to college, which was 90 something. And now I was late to the game on that, but not by so far that I had a huge audio tape collection, and I didn't. No, it wasn't 8-track, and I didn't want to. I did all the money I had spent on cassettes. I didn't want to then switch it over into CDs. So I really waited, a bunch of years until CDs became the big thing. But comparing that to a CD versus a LaserDisc, that there's a very wide gap between the size of a LaserDisc and the size of a CD time frame wise. It took them a while to get that down.
And not just that, but like putting a movie on a CD wasn't something that was done until later. There was
CDs there was way too much data.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why for music it worked out okay, but when we're talking a film, like they couldn't fit a film onto a CD at that point. So
the longer movies would. Even when they did something like The Right Stuff, you'd have to flip the DVD over. That's how much information was on it.
And some of them had 2 laser discs.
Or some of them had 2. Yeah.
The better ones had multiple. So like that was one of the things that was sort of a LaserDisc separator, was that like you could buy them a lot of times. They would release a CAV and CLV, which if I'm remembering correctly, CAV LaserDiscs were the movie was all on one disc, 2 sides, and then CLV was the better audio and visual presentation, because they didn't try to scrunch it down and fit onto one disc. They would separate it over 2 or 3 sometimes, and maybe even 4 in certain cases, but at least 2, in order to give you the best picture and sound quality that you could possibly get at the time.
Well, that's amazing. Well, I've learned a lot, and you haven't even showed everything off, right? You brought other stuff to show off. What
so we have a couple of the more modern things. Like we have a copy of Deadpool in this auction from 2016, and Deadpool is a very cool one. It was produced officially by the studio, and it was given out at the 2016 San Diego Comic-Con for anybody that was buying the Blu-ray or the DVD copy from them at the booth. So the first 25 sales each day would get a copy of the VHS thrown in with it. So they only made 100 copies of it. God knows where they all are, because they're really tough to find. And it came signed by Ryan Reynolds. So a really interesting piece. One of the more later studio production VHS tapes out there. There's not really anything after that as far as
I didn't think they had anything that far. I thought it was 2004 or 2002. What wasn't that when they stopped?
2007 is when Cars came out, which we also have in this auction. That's one of the other ones Cars. Cars was 2007, and this one was available only through like the Disney Movie Club that you would have to mail away for. So there were very few of them that were produced. DVD was the dominant format by 2002, but VHS was still being made up until 2006 and sold in stores. The very last VHS tape that you could find in stores was A History of Violence, another comic-related title. History of Violence came out 2006, and then after that, stores weren't carrying VHS anymore. The studios had pretty much moved on from it, and they were focused on DVD. Cars was the very last one that was not available in stores and was only available through the mail from Disney. So that's a super rare and hard to find more modern tape. Most of the time, like when people reach out and ask about Disney tapes, everybody has Disney tapes. Everybody bought Disney tapes. A lot of them people would just buy because of the marketing that Disney would do, is they'd say buy it now before it goes back in the vault. And so people like Pavlovian dogs would rush out and buy that copy of Sleeping Beauty so that they could have it in case their kid or their grandkid wanted to watch it at some point, and they knew that it wasn't going to be available in a year or two. So
because they go in a vault for 7 years, and so that was the key. That was the brilliance of Disney, was 7 year, the 7 year vault problem.
Super smart on Disney's part, because if you ever take a look at the top 10 most produced VHS tapes of all time, 7 out of the top 10 are all Disney animated movies. So outside of like Titanic, Jurassic Park, and Independence Day. Everything on the top 10 is Disney. So like Lion King had 32 million copies produced, and this is why, like, there were 32 million copies floating around out there. There's still a lot of sealed copies that are out there.
It's just a matter of law of averages.
Yeah, supply and demand. It's one of those things where the supply just far outweighs the demand for Disney stuff. So the Disney stuff that's valuable and sought after by collectors for the most part is the stuff that came out pre-1986, again in that sweet spot. But whereas like VHS, you can still find tapes that came out in the late 80s and in the 90s that are still valuable. When it comes to Disney tapes, anything after 86 basically is maybe $20, $30, and there's tons of them out there. You can find them everywhere still.
Yeah, please. The clamshell Disney stuff, we get a lot of requests for that. I know, Jay, you get probably 20 a week, right?
I get bombed with people. Like the majority of the communications that come over to me are people that have Disney tapes still that think that they're worth something.
I think I see a few on X's, rack back there. Back there.
Akira and Aladdin.
See?
Yep.
So what else did you bring?
So we discussed
the Rockies, the Superman, not the Goonies. We missed the Goonies in the
we missed Goonies. We kind of touched on Goonies. So we've got this copy of Goonies is it's got a this is graded by IGS, and they do the box and the seal, and so it's got a matching 9.5 out of 10 for both, which is unheard of. This thing looks like it was just pulled out of a factory sealed case. It's beautiful. It's not the earliest release. It doesn't have the two-tone tape. It doesn't have the silver security sticker on it, but it is, I've only seen one or two of those very early, two-toned with the silver sticker. Otherwise, this is as good as you're going to get. This is the first release slipcase that it's in. It's got the wraparound Warner Brothers watermarks on it, which indicates that it was made very early, as opposed to tapes that only have it on the front or on the bottom. A lot of times those are later tapes. But so this one they're just really hard to find for some reason. Even though Goonies is an insanely popular movie, finding a sealed copy is nearly impossible for this.
Because everybody opened them to watch them. I mean,
that's exactly really
it's like a video game. My parents would have murdered me if I didn't play my video games. I'm just going to hold it for later. No.
Yeah.
It's the same way with this. I can't imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're just so hard to find from that point in time. That's why copies like this, that even though they're not the earliest of the early, they're still very early, and they're still insanely hard to find. And there's so many Goonies fans out there that every time one of them gets posted, they usually just go crazy trying to buy it. So
that's
incredible. It goes high. Yeah, and it's like I said, you can't do much better than this one as far as quality goes, because it looks like it literally just came off the line at the factory. It's gorgeous.
That's amazing. So what about Mission Impossible? Why is that special?
It's the very very last beta release. So this is the last beta, and again, like, most places didn't carry it at all because it was beta and nobody was buying beta at that point. So there may be a couple stores in the country tops that probably had ordered any copies of this. So there's conceivably maybe less than 50 of these that were even made, because they were just making them to order at that point.
That's amazing.
And the fact that this even exists, most people have, if you tried to Google this a year ago, you probably couldn't even find an image for it online. Most people didn't even know that there was a beta release for Mission Impossible. So this is just it's such an interesting, cool late release that most people would have never realized was out there.
How did that conversation go when you got that phone call?
Man, the consignor that brought this to me, they bought out a huge store that had carried beta and VHS from the late 70s. That had opened, I think, in 1979, and it stayed open until 2010, if I'm not mistaken. And they still had huge amounts of backstock of old beta and VHS tapes, and this was one of the tapes that was in there. They still had a copy of Mission Impossible, and like I said, people had whispered about there being a release for Mission Impossible on beta out there over the years, but I'd never seen one, and I'd never heard of anybody that actually had one. And so I didn't know if it was real until the person had reached out. And I guess they have all of the documentation from when they had to sign contracts with Paramount for the orders and all that. Like they have all that information still. And so it's pretty remarkable that this is even out there. I know it's it's on the later side. Usually, like, collectors aren't seeking out stuff from the 90s, but just the importance of this thing and the rarity of it. And it's an 85 plus, so it's an amazing shape. It's got everything going for it.
It's amazing. So is that the last one?
I think that's it. I think we've talked about everything else.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, thanks for. I mean, really, our guests are usually 15 minutes or just chit chatting with us the whole time, but 35 minutes later, we're still talking about VHS because they're that amazing.
It's fun. It's
so
fun
when's your sale?
The auction is going to go on February 17th, so there's still a little bit of time. There's we touched on maybe 7 or 10 titles from that auction, but like this thing it's really stacked with rare stuff. We've got so many early we have Apocalypse Now on beta and VHS. We've got just super early rare releases. I said to somebody when we were putting this thing together that I don't know that we'll be able to replicate the quality of this auction, because there's so much rare good stuff in this auction that most people have never seen before, or maybe only seen pictures of, but had not had the opportunity to bid on or buy from anybody. So it's pretty exciting just to see all this stuff together.
That's incredible. So if you need to go to the auction, everybody, ha.com/7299, that's the sale. All you have to do is type that in the address. It'll go right there. Great items. Jay, we really appreciate you coming on to the show. Stick around and, talk to us about the stuff that we show. You can always ask questions if you've never done it. But we'll move on, I guess. That was really fun, actually. I'm glad we were able to get that. We had great questions from the audience. You want to go next, partner, or do you want me to start? You can always flip it,
Again, go ahead. I'll finish it off.
We'll flip this time. We're usually X goes first, but we're stuck at home. I guess we'll do our. We'll flip things around. This is the what Wiedman would want section, I guess. I brought some cool stuff. First thing I wanted to show was the Batman 50. I really like this book. It's one of my favorite Two-Face covers. Aside from there's a 70s, or I think it's a 70s Batman, where he's in a room and he's made this, like the living room completely in half, as one side's good, one side's bad. Aside from that, this is probably one of my favorite covers of Two-Face. You have the coin spinning. It's just a classic cover. It's early Batman. And what's this, a 4.5? This is in our weekly sale at a 4.5. We have our 4.0. We have such great items in our weekly sale all the time. I think that this is a no-brainer if you're looking for a great cover, and it's clean. For the yellow, it's absolutely clean. That's what I think it really drew me to this book. So it might only be a 4.0, but it's an absolutely spectacular cover. It's a beautiful 4.0. What does the back look like? See, I mean, even that doesn't look too bad. So I don't know what is wrong internally for it or on the spine to make it a 4, but that's a gorgeous 4. I'm not really sure what more you would want for a 4.0. Not even major creasing. So that's great. So next would be the Battle 14, and this kind of goes, and I brought a lot of them from this time period, and I'll show you. But 1950 to 1955, I have been saying now for multiple podcasts are kind of the the holy grail of collecting. It's incredibly difficult to find the horror books. It's even more so difficult to find the war books. They're brutal still. There's no comic code, but they're incredibly rare because they got thrown out. They got burned in the book burnings on the East Coast. If you didn't know that, Jay, there was book burnings, and there were book burnings in America in the Northeast. Just
were
trying
there VHS
to.
Burnings?
What was that?
No VHS.
VHS burnings. There probably have been, but not out of spite, just out of these things aren't worth crap anymore, and so they got rid of them.
Well, Goodwill used to throw them away. That's
I'm sure.
the other thing. Yeah.
So, but these books are super super rare, and there's some flamethrower covers I've talked to you about, X. Just trying to find flamethrower covers. I found a new one yesterday. I was all mad about that. I didn't know about. Um, but incredibly rare I think there's only 11 on the census. I think I looked at what is the census on this. Maybe I'm thinking of another book of ours that I brought, but there's a very low census amount. Oh, there's three on the census. Good luck finding them, especially finding them graded. So 6.0, so that's the lowest on the census, and that's still an incredible grade for this book. Good luck.
Let me ask a question here. When
Yeah.
when a book is that rare, but maybe isn't something that has the mass appeal of like a regular superhero comic
Sure.
or something like that. Like even though there's a low number, because I have this question from people with VHS tapes sometimes that they'll say like, oh, this is the only one of these, and I'll say like I love the Scorsese movie King of Comedy, and I have one of the only sealed copies I've ever come across. I have a sealed beta and a sealed VHS, but just because it's the only one out there, I don't know that that's going to translate to a demand or dollars. If I ever wanted to sell it. So, with some of these comic books that are so rare, is there even a collecting community that's looking for those that would put a
Sure.
premium on
We
that,
get
even
this
though there's only
question all the
20?
time, but it's oh, there's only one on the census. Yeah, but with modern books we see this a lot. Hey, there's only one on the census. Yeah, but nobody cares. No,
Yeah.
but nobody cares, and nobody cares means it's not valuable. It's a little different when you're talking about 50 to 55 because unless it's a Western book.
That's what I was
Uh,
gonna say. All
yeah,
the
unless it's
Western.
a Western or maybe it's a Dell, Gold Key, things like that. The war books are a little more violent. They're almost like a pre-code horror,
Yeah.
crossover. So they're rare and they have the violence with it to then spur oh, I want that cover. Like there's a couple famous covers that use racial slurs. That's really super rare. There's two books specifically from this time period that use racial slurs. That book goes insane. I mean, it's very very high value because they're very hard to find. Not only are they very hard to find, but they're so rare that they have a racial slur on it that people want that book. And so you get this little bit of difference of demand because they're that rare.
You have the demand, but you still don't have the demand of the superheroes. That's
Oh,
also
absolutely not, without
Yeah.
a doubt. It's still a lot lower of a collector. I mean, we're not talking. That book will go for 100, 200, 300, $400. We're not talking about 4,000 to 10,000. There's got to be a reason for it.
Gotcha.
So, next book. This is kind of one of those really weird books. This is a weird crossover book. This is usually a Western title, but it's also in that pre-code horror time frame of 1950 to 1955. And so a lot of these companies were trying this crossover with horror to try and get readership up or try to save their publishing company because as 250 publishers turn into 5 within 3 years of the date of this book. So this is a Western book normally, but it has this pre-code horror feel to it. Yeah, it's only $6, but it just started last night. You're going to see this book is going to go up, and this has got this is a higher grade. I'm not sure. I've seen a few of these since I've started with Heritage. What's the census on this? Again, I brought a bunch that are very, very low census. What are we looking at here? There's 87, so it's not crazy low because of this crossover. A lot of people seem to have found this, but still 87 compared to your Silver Age books of 4,000. That's nothing to sneeze at. Next. I thought this was amazing. This is a 9.0 Boy Comics number 4. We do have a bunch of Hitler covers in this auction. This isn't one I've ever seen. I've never seen this, or if I have seen it, I may have only seen it once. You can see that the America Boys of Action are coming in. They're fighting against Hitler. This is the height of the war. This is what year is this? I think 1942. So in 1942, we had already gotten into the war. We were ready to go. It wasn't until 44 we started, making the push towards Germany, a serious push towards Germany, and then the Pacific Theater. So we've still got 2 more years of fighting Hitler at this point, but everybody knew at this point, it was all or nothing. We had to take action. Next. I thought this was amazing. This is in a weekly sale. Have you ever seen a Daredevil Battles Hitler or Daredevil 1 in a weekly sale, X?
No.
So, right. That's how big our weekly sales get, guys. We have a Daredevil Battles Hitler in our weekly sale. That just I when I saw this, I was going through trying to figure out what to pull. I looked at it and said, "No, it can't be. It can't be in this sale." And I looked at it again and went, "Really? In the weekly?" Because that's just how big and how many of major books we get all the time. Obviously it's doing well. I got outbid already on it. I bid 500 yesterday, and I don't think I got a notice saying I got outbid, but I got crushed. Obviously, this is a big book and rare. What's the census? I don't know what the census is on something like this. Can't be crazy. It's not insane. 63, even less than the Barbie bar or B bar B. That's amazing. I can't wait to see how well that does. It's already at a good uh value. I think it's like a $3,000 book at that grade, so not bad for their first day, 24 hours of the sale. Next. So this Diary Secrets, now this is the one I looked at the census on. Take a look at the census on this. These St. John books and Baker covers can be rare, right? Uh, but this one has a total of 21. And when you start getting into these kinds of numbers, my buddy Rick Akers, who was asking a question earlier, he's a huge Baker fan. Uh, he knows how rare these books are. I mean, they're ridiculously rare. Again, this falls in that time period. So you had pre-code horror in the 50s, you had the war books in the 50s, and you had the romance stuff in the 50s, all super, super rare. But even the DC 1950 to 1959s, like if you were to look at, try and find an Action 252, an Action 242, or anything in super high grade from that time period, Atlas, that you saw the war books with, which then turn into Marvel, are super rare. The only ones that we know of that are super common are like Dell and Gold Key. They they kind of made that, that has great color too, as he said. They kind of made the transition really well because they were doing a lot of the movies, they were doing a lot of the cowboy westerns. They kind of made the transition better than most. And their little pledge on the inside front of their cover that would say, "Parents, we're going to maintain, respectability for your kids." So that did a lot too. They were printing a lot of books. They survived pretty well. Not in high grade, but they survived in quantity. Next, Tommy. I brought this because I thought it was interesting. We had what was it in the sale X? It was on the cover. It was the Mile High. It was like a 9.6 of this.
9.496. Yeah.
It was something ridiculous. So I had never seen that book, and now we have another one. Tommy, what's the census on this? Because I remember looking at it. It's something ridiculous.
We'll probably see which one's the high. Like it was probably the highest graded here.
Yeah.
It was a 9.6.
It was a 9.6, and there's 22 on the census. So we just had one. It was a 9.6. Now we have another copy, but that's the first time I've seen it were those two times. It's incredibly rare for us to get this book. So if you want it, this is probably where you need to get it. I can't imagine you're going to see another copy anytime soon. That's been the theme of everything I kind of brought to show off. The same with the four favorites. The four favorites I know is really low in census. Also, I had almost a huge Ace periodicals collection. You and I went to Seattle, right?
Yeah.
And I stayed a day after in Seattle to pick up this collection where there are 2 boxes of Golden Age. One of them was four favorites, a bunch of four favorites. Another one was Super Mystery, Lightning Comics, Flag, Victory Comics. All these really hard Ace periodics to get, but the consigner actually liked those because those were cheap back in the day. They were hard to find. He found them at conventions, and now they're coming up for auction in a bunch of weeks. So what's the census on this one? I know it's super low. I think that was my theme for the whole week for the podcast, was how rare books are. And this one has 11, which is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So again, it's not a huge grade, but good luck, because I haven't seen that book. What's the grade on it again? It's something ridiculous. It's a 3.0. I mean, yeah, there are 7 higher graded. Good luck. They stay in the collection. So that's our auction for this week for the books. ha.com/122306. That's how we keep track of everything. It's the 6th week of the year. So good luck, guys. That's our comics for the week. Now it's X's turn.
So we have the comic art coming up. So and it ends tonight in a couple of hours. So Tommy, could you pull up the first one?
As always, guys, chime in with questions. We like questions.
So so this is the first piece that I brought in, and it's a Wolverine 76, and it's the title splash. It's a great piece of Wolverine on a motorcycle, 3 panels, a wolf hunting a rabbit, and then it crossing his path on the way to where he's going. Again, a nice title splash from the Wolverine series around this time period. Kubert was doing the art, but this is a Tom Croker piece. And again, for a Wolverine title splash, 3 great panels, it's under $250. So
he doesn't run over the wolf, does he? Do you remember? That would be rude.
I think it's a play on him being the wolf and running after a rabbit in the story, but I don't remember.
I would assume, but you said it crossed his path. I just didn't want him to run it over. That's all I'm saying. We don't need wolf kill on a roadkill.
So again, a great piece from the Kubert time period, but not a Kubert piece, and much more affordable than what a Kubert piece would run you. So the next piece, I brought this one along. Again, a nice detective page. It's a modern piece, but David Lapham has been doing art for quite a while. He's been doing miniseries in DC, and if I'm not mistaken, he also did a DC Marvel Punisher and Daredevil series. So this one I particularly brought in because it is what you would consider a true half splash. It's 2 huge panels, 1 huge panel on the top, 1 huge panel on the bottom, and it's Harley Quinn. So
I hate you.
Again,
I hate you so much.
Great Batman coming into Harley Quinn, and then that great, beautiful bottom panel of her in front of the security system. So, and again, Tommy, this page under $500. So, and
what lot number is that?
55.
What's the lot?
46055. But
46055. I hate
that
so
bottom
much.
panel of her is gorgeous, and
it is. That's why I kind of hate you.
She has a club on her shoulder. So, your old poker days.
I hate you so much.
I thought you liked that one.
I hate you so much. That was going to cost me.
This one I brought along because there's actually 2 Steve Dillon Punisher pieces, and Steve Dillon is very well known for Preacher, Wolverine series, and of course the Punisher. The Punisher was one of his what most collectors collect besides Preacher from him, and this is just a great page of Frank just walking through all the bad guys on his way to deal with the situation. And like I said, there's another page. I particularly picked this one because it had a lot of detail. And it was his example, and it was under $500. I think that the other page, it's at $250. There is a second page. I think it's previous to this one or after this one, and it was I think already over $500. But that one has Frank doing what Frank does best. Actually, it's at 330, and it's the next page. So, and yeah, Frank about to burn down a whole place after he took care of business. So,
Jay,
But
if you're
this-
wondering why I hate X all of a sudden, it's because he always brings stuff that I really like, and then I have to try and bid on.
again, it's not,
Like he
I
did
like
with
this
that
too.
stupid, like he did the last time with that twice up. What was that? The
The girls.
Oh my god, I love that so much. I had to buy it.
Well, it's funny. He's just talking about the Batman page, the David Lapham page, and I was like, oh, Straight Bullets. I loved him, and now I'm looking.
There you go.
Too.
So he's now you know my pain. No, don't bid on that. My wife wants that.
Again, it's
man.
what we would all want, actually.
Yeah,
because
that's the thing.
I would bid
We
on
would
these
all
pages
want that,
too.
yeah.
So,
Yep.
So, and like I said, Dylan is one of my favorites. That's why I kind of put, and Punisher is what a lot of people look for of his artwork. Again, besides Preacher. So, and this page is still under $500. Great Punisher about to burn down the place. So, if anybody read these stories, they know how violent and how good Dylan was drawing these. So
It's a great run.
Let me ask you: are you a fan of not having the word bubbles on your pages, or would you rather have the text there?
Me?
Yes, you.
Well, there's two schools of that. So I really like the words, particularly in certain panel pages. There are panel pages that I would buy more for what it's being said on the page than the art, even though the art is still great. But sometimes the words make it, like my Daredevil page. With
Like your
Typhoid
Daredevil page, yeah.
That's the panel page that is just like, that's going to be one of the last panel pages I ever sell, just because of what it says on there. But there are pages that you don't need the words. Like the imagery is worth 1,000 words, and in certain situations where that like that Punisher page, for example, that even if he is thinking to himself or saying something, you don't need the words to realize that he just finished business and about to burn the mafia place down. So
Right, but you don't think that. So let's go back to that page, can we, Tommy?
again, if he was saying something meaningful like Manucci, because there's
Can you put us in the three panel mode where you can see all three of us too? So you don't think, like, when you're looking at these offsets, like the upper left of that top panel, right? Whereas where the word bubbles would be, they
Yeah.
move almost like a book cover, right? You have
Yeah,
this overlapping, or this abundance of blank space. Don't you think it would look better with the text in there that's supposed to be there? I mean, what's your opinion on that?
Visually, I don't mind it that much.
You don't.
Like I said, if the text had something pertinent there, where it's just like he's saying Manucci is not here, and it's just like, where could she be, or something like that. If it was an important page of a pivotal moment in the storyline, and the words kind of added to the page, then yes, I would love to have the words in there. There's a lot of newer art that I would buy. One, if it was actually drawn, and two, if it had the words rather than if it didn't have the words. One of them being an Avengers story that I had mentioned before in another podcast, where Doctor Strange unleashes the Eye of Agamotto and kills an Earth to save their own Earth. The words he says on that page are great, but the artist didn't draw the art, and the words wouldn't have been on the page anyways. So there is something that adds when there are, again, verbiage that means something. Like I said, again, the Daredevil page where Typhoid Mary is chasing him, and then he starts using reverse psychology, saying, well, okay, you got me. Like, can't the chase become the chasee? And then Typhoid Mary starts losing her mind because she can't take it. So, I mean, like I said, there's people that like it, there's people that don't. It's kind of like the pencil and inks theory.
Right.
I don't particularly like pencils. There's pages that I would rather have the word bubbles on them, but unfortunately, that's how it is today. So.
You guys are obviously far more into this. I don't own any real original art as much as I love comics, but as a reader, I think that it's such a marriage between the whoever's writing the comic and whoever's drawing the comic. Like sometimes I'll buy it just based off of one of those things, but when you have a great pairing, like I'd want those words on the page, because if it's a a Frank Miller Daredevil Born Again page, like if you've got Klaus Janson and you've got Frank Miller's words on there, I feel like that's, you know what I mean? I think it all depends on the combination, but because the writing is so important to so many of these stories, like having the art and the words on there just, I think, would mean more to me.
And I guess that's kind of the reason I brought it up, is it's going to be different for everybody. And this is kind of what we kind of say at Heritage all the time. And Jay, I know you say it, and I know X, you say it, collect what you love. You know what I mean? It doesn't really matter what we're saying here. I'm just bringing it up for the sake of discussion, right?
Well, it's a good discussion, because I can go further with, again, more Daredevil, going to the marriage of the story and the art, the Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale stories, where that is the perfect marriage of a storyteller and an artist. And one of the best interviews that I've read about that is in the Daredevil Yellow trade paperback at the back. I own the title. I own the last page to Daredevil Yellow #1, where he puts on the costume for the first time, and that I used to own the unpublished page as well, and or the initial version, as we called it when we sold it. And Lowell saw the initial version and told Sale that Matt didn't look like a boxer. He didn't look lean enough. He looked too bulky. He almost looked like a bodybuilder. And in that conversation, Sale realized what he was saying, and he redrew the last page to make him leaner, to make him sleeker, to make him more like a boxer. And that, again, Lowell is the writer, but he saw something in the art that didn't fit what the persona should be. And Sale agreed. And that's kind of the marriage. What happens when a great writer and a great artist join. Unfortunately, the words aren't on those pages, which is what I would have loved. I had the page where Crusher Creel knocks down his dad to the mat, and that page has one of the best lines, I think, in the whole story, is the measure of a man is not in how he gets hit down to the mat, it's in how he gets up. And then
you would much rather have that on page.
I'd love to have that, but at the same time, I knew that page had those words, and even though those words weren't there, I was such a big fan that those words would just resonate when I would see the page, like, because it's not so much that is a line of a comic, that is a line of life.
Right.
The measure of a man is not how you get hit down to the floor. It's in Rocky, when he's talking to his son in the third or fourth movie. It's life isn't going to hit harder. Life is going to hit harder than anything that you can.
Right.
And the measure of you is how you get up. And this is about comics. They give you reality in doses of fiction.
That's very true. And to everybody out there, there are fixes for this. So everybody knows.
Yeah.
You can have an acetate overlay made with the bubbles put on them and everything. I'm talking more about, originally. I prefer myself originally having, making it look like what the book is. That's basically what I like personally. And Jay, it sounds like Jay likes the same thing.
Well, and that's again, one of my favorite pieces are title splashes, because of because of the indicia, because of the credits, because of all the little verbiage on it and stuff like that. I love those pages, but again, the way that the industry has progressed is a lot of it is done digitally now.
It's digital, yeah.
So, Tommy, next art. Oh, okay. So I brought this one. And Ralph Lopez Espy is a very prolific Spanish artist, and he's done a lot of recreations and a lot of Spanish covers of heroes. But I brought this one along because It's more of a horror piece, and again, also a Western because it's on a horse. But this has more of a horror feel than anything to it. And you don't
This
really
is a cool
see,
piece.
yeah, you don't really see SP pieces that aren't superhero or stuff like that. But this is kind of very in the vein of Jaime Cortez, of the horror from Brazil and stuff like that. And it's just a great piece to have on your wall if you like monsters and stuff like that. And again, his pieces usually go very affordable. This is under $200. Oh, it's under $150. So it's just a great, beautiful piece to have on
That's
your
really
wall.
cool. I may bid on that. Anybody who doesn't want to bid on that, I think I'm going to. That is really a cool piece. I'm not going to lie.
Cool.
And again, it's just perfect. Like again, you're seeing like a zombie and a zombie horse coming out of the grave in the full moonlight.
Yeah, you're funny, Tommy.
Tommy next.
He's going to place a bid on that first. That's what he's trying to do. Jerk.
So I brought in a Geist piece because again, Geist has been very prolific in the industry, both in DC and Marvel. And this one I pretty much brought because it's kind of a full page of a little mini story within the Birds of Prey issue. It's 2 pages of romance between them two, and then in the last panel, if you see on the second page, the heartbroken woman or the woman that's planning all vengeance against them. So on the second page on the bottom, where she's seeing through the trees. Again, just a great piece. By Butch Geist, Jackson Geist, which is a very great artist, and just a lovely piece to have on your wall. Consecutive pages, which is always great to have. It like I say, it continues a story or has a little caption of the story within itself, and just again a nice love pages to have on your wall. So, and under 2 pages for under $150 is just great. So. This one I brought along again, Gulacy Catwoman page, and just a great one between Cat and Bird, Catwoman and a Penguin. So nice action, under $500 in the one of the Catwoman suits that I like a little bit more, where I got that little zipper and she has those glasses on. So that's one of the things that. Belante back in the 90s did a certain take on Catwoman where she had the tail, and one of the things that I like of artists and particularly Catwoman is their takes on her costumes and the way that they form her and stuff like that. One of my favorites was Tim Sale's Catwoman When in Rome. So, and just a great piece to have on your wall, under $500. 2 villains going at each other of the Batman's Rogue Squad. So. And Jimmy Palmiotti inking. So this one I brought in because I've been becoming more of a Doctor Strange fan recently, and I just like because of the movies, and I guess it's Cumberbatch did a great job. This is just
insanely good. He's so good.
But this is a great page of Doctor Strange, Rudy Nebres, Alan Coleridge. Sorry, I do those last names horribly, but it has Wong, it has Steven, and it has Clea in the last panel, and Doctor Strange getting ready to just conjure up some magic. Great filler page to have on your wall with great images of Doctor Strange and his assistants. So, and under $250.
I bet you had that 70s, 80s haircut when you were that age. Back then, before you lost all your hair.
Oh, I used to fro my hair. It was really fun.
Oh, you used to fro your hair. I want to see pictures.
Yeah, we need
You
pictures
should
of that.
never have said that.
There's only one picture of that time period.
I need to see that.
Yeah.
My hair, I could slick back my hair and then like have a nice little. It was the funniest thing in the world. So
we need to find a picture of that.
Yep.
So next I brought in again, like I've been doing strips recently, and I brought in James Bond strip. They don't come up often. This one's a nice one with Bond and the beautiful girl in the story. It's a British artist, John McCloskey, and I particularly like these because of the detail in the clothing, just like some of the other Alex Raymond strips and other strips of that time period, where you see the detail, the cross hatching on the backgrounds, the line work on the suits and stuff like that, and again, if you look at the woman, the beautifully made woman with the minimal lines on the hair, making the hair and like the luscious curls and stuff like that. It's just a great example of artistry and of that time period of. And again, a strip that doesn't come up often. Bond strips don't come up often, and they do go for a couple $100s. This one is under $500, so hopefully somebody might get lucky and get it under $500. I've seen them go to $750, $1,000, depending on the action on the page. So it's just a great piece. This one I brought also is kind of a Bond parody where the guy in the middle, but it's one of those Hollywood pieces that there's a lot of parodies and the character artists and there's a lot of detail, and it's one of those just fun pieces that you can just put on a wall and just try to guess who are the actors that are all around the image. Like the only one I can really distinguish is the I Dream of Jeannie on the bottom. So, but there's awesome amounts of detail and definitely multiple characters from different Hollywood movies in there. So it's just a great piece. And again, under $500. So
That's a crazy amount of detail.
oh yeah. Next, Tommy. Oh, this one I brought in because it's George Papp. It's under $500. This is a Golden Age artist on a Superboy page that has Superboy saving the day, but it has a different
Not in his normal costume, though.
Different costume. And that was what's kind of cool on this page. And again, Papp pages don't come up often. This is a Golden Age artist that his stuff was kept by the family or kept by collectors. We just recently had in our signature auction the second appearance of Speedy or a page from there, and the title splash went for like 30 something or $40,000. So this is a great Silver Age Superboy page by Papp, under $500. Great example of him flying into action and again picking up cars if you like vintage cars or vintage looking cars. So just a great piece to have on your wall.
Unless you're like me and running out of wall space. I need a bigger place just for my wall space.
That's why you start rotating the art afterwards.
Jay, I'm gonna have to start borrowing some wall space. It looks kind of bare over there.
Yeah. I this is temporary until we find another place. So I'm trying not to get too settled.
That's the problem.
So this next splash was under $500, but it's a great Sal Vuto and Bob Alman Black Panther splash of Black Panther fighting Iron Fist. Just a great image that you can have on your wall. Two heroes fighting each other. The Black Panther movie had just come out, so I mean, and it was under $500. It's still under $1,000 for this great splash. So, and a great amount of detail. So, and I think this is the last piece. Yes, this is the last piece, and I brought this one along because yesterday was at around $20. There's actually 3 other pieces of the comic book foldies, and these are all Wally Wood pieces, and they're all under $100, which is insane for Wally Wood. This one has a little bit of glue residue on it, but there's, if I'm not mistaken, there's a really funny bear one that I don't understand why they made a bear one with all the superheroes. I think there's a Joker one, which was the most expensive one. It was the first one, and then there was another character. But they're all by Wally Wood, a master in the industry. Great EC artist. Great one of the first guys to create his own independent characters and own independent publishing, and just a legend in the industry. And you can have a piece of his art for under $100, especially a superhero Lex Luthor.
If you can get a piece under $500, that's a win.
Yeah. So,
especially if it's published. I mean, it doesn't matter how big it's published.
And these are cards, which are cool. So again, cards. The Marvel cards would first got me into comics. So it's always cool to have those. And that's this week. It's ending in a couple of hours. So
don't miss them. You always pick great stuff, and I'm always like, why didn't I see that? Why didn't I see that? And then I'm in hock. Do you ever showcase CBCS graded comics, clear holder, no Newton rings, and more sturdy? We sell them. It's a good question, but here's the problem with CBCS. It's the same problem that we have with the VHS versus beta argument. Betamax was the better item. It was smaller. You fit more information in it. However, that didn't win. VHS won the advertising war with the more money. And CBCS versus CGC is the exact same way. CBCS may have the better holder. That does not translate into money. They're about 20% off as far as grading, versus price goes. So it doesn't matter. We sell them, but I guarantee you're going to be hurting when it comes to values. If you want to sell your stuff for the most, you unfortunately got to play the game and go with CGC. That's just how it is. I hate saying that. I understand that CBCS is probably the better product, but that doesn't mean they're winning. And when it comes to getting our clients the most money, we have to go with CGC.
But if we do have CBCS like an Action 1 or something like that, we would bring it around because it's something that we don't showcase that often.
And we would also strongly suggest that you get it, switched over. That's the other thing, is we do crossover quite a bit just because of those values. So I mean, if you've got a 6.0 Action 1 and a CGC versus CBCS, you're going to make tens and tens of thousands of dollars more with a CGC holder in the same grade. It's just how it is. I think my boss says when he's giving values, he gives a grade lower. So if you're looking at a 6.0, he's giving you a 5.5 or a 5.0 value for a CBCS book. It's just part of the reason is they don't report to any reporting agency, so it's not easy to get numbers and see what those are going for. I hate telling you that, but it's just true. So, any other questions out there? Okay, I really appreciate you guys joining us. I know X and Jay, thanks so much for coming out. It was a lot of fun. We had over a half hour of great discussion with VHS. Don't forget about that sale. What was the sale number again?
7299.
7299. And what day does that end?
February 17th.
February 17th. Hopefully I'm on the podium. I'm excited for that one. But if not, I will see you. We hope you have a very, very successful auction. This is Brian Wiedman. Thank you very much for joining us in the Gavel Strikes. And we had... That's okay.
Xavier,
Just shut up.
Jay.
We're used to doing this in person. So, guys, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Hopefully, we're going to have another guest. So, anything else, guys?
No, thanks so much for having me, guys. Love to do it again.
Absolutely. It was a blast. Thanks, guys. We'll see you later.